Well, I'm going to leave the screensaver up for a bit, or so people can uh, who come in on YouTube later can actually see this. But uh, see the title of what we're doing today, and also get a little bit of a visual there, um, and a little bit of information before we start. Uh, the title of today's retreat is Everybody's Journey. Unveiling the unveiling hidden wholeness. And the purpose of today's retreat, for those of you who are just dropping in now or later on YouTube, is to expand and deepen your view of reality, the entire cosmos, and yourself. And earlier, for the guys who showed up for the first meditation period, I started with a bit of Polynesian wisdom. Uh, uh, our Polynesian brothers and sisters, they had a saying that said, we are all fishing for minnows standing on the back of a whale. Let that sink in for a minute, the irony of all that. We are all fishing for minnows standing on the back of a whale. Uh, we're all fishing for something. I mean, Elon Musk is fishing for something. Now it's $1 trillion. Uh, is that what he's really looking for? No. We're all fishing for minnows standing on the back of a whale, standing on the back of something immense. We're playing for small things, you say. And I think that's it's a cautionary bit of wisdom, so precise. And this is everybody's journey. We're all fishing for minnows standing on the back of a whale until we realize that right under our feet, we don't have to even take a step, is what we're looking for, something immense. And in the screensaver, that's a shot from Loose Leaf Hollow Zendo, where I sit normally and do my meditation and do any kind of in-person teaching. Uh, there's behind me and really underneath me are the living Buddha and the living Christ. And the little placard below, which uh, has puzzled a lot of people who've seen it, it's saying not true. That's the basic teaching. Uh, it's not Buddha or Jesus. It's not Republican or Democrat. It's not mind or body. It's not male or female. They're not two. They are connected. There's a wholeness here we're going to look at. When I worked with a Korean Zen master, he beat me over the head with that phrase. He'd say, not two. And I'd say, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, you're doing it right now. He says, and I said, what? He says, you're making two. And I said, well, what is it? He says, if you don't make two, two won't exist. He says, two is the start of all the conflict in the world. You know, United States and Iran, Israel and Palestine. We make two where we're actually a whole. But that wholeness is hidden. So, okay. And I owe a great debt to all my Buddhist teachers for, in a way, rekindling a vast view I inherited being raised in the 1950s Catholic tradition, but lost along the way. Well, how do we lose this? Um, we're going to explore that, and we're going to explore the unveiling of it. So let's start with one of the great bits of uh, spiritual wisdom, and this is from the Islamic tradition, and particularly this little quote is not part of the Quran, but it's sort of venerated by the Sufis, who are the contemplative wing of Islam. That the contemplative wings of all the traditions have been persecuted for some time, and Jesus was a uh, contemplative meteor in the Jewish tradition, and traditions often don't like these prophets, these guys who have such insight, and And so Sufis have been treated such anyway. Well, here's a quote, and it's the setup is it's from a bunch of little vignettes about Muhammad's life that are not in the Quran. They're extra. They're in a bunch of things called a bunch of vignettes called the Haditha. And this is the setup here is Muhammad is in a cave where he spent a lot of his time getting the Quran and getting direct transmissions from Allah. And in this case, Allah is actually speaking to Muhammad. Well, here's the quote Muhammad, between you and me, there are 70,000 veils, but between me and you, there are none. So again, this is Muhammad, Allah speaking to Muhammad, and he's trying to show him the setup here. And again, it's another version of uh, fishing for minnows standing on the back of a whale, as the Polynesians say. Uh, Allah says, Muhammad, between you and me, there are 70,000 veils, but between me and you, there are none. That's the whole work right there that they lay out. If there's veils, but then we're all Muhammad, we're all the human being trying to actually, be in communion with the divine, trying to see the divine, to see this hidden wholeness, which is the divine, and our vision is veiled. Well, I have this here to just make it a little. This is a Tibetan kata that I actually got this from the Dalai Lama. A long story about that, but it could serve as a veil. And so here's one veil. Now I can still see the squares and see all there. Now here's two veils. Double it over. I can barely see the shape of the squares, but I can't really see what's in them. And here's four veils.
Hey Joe, would you turn on your video?
Uh-huh. Okay, sure. Here's four veils. Uh, and I can't, it's as good as a brick wall. So again, yeah, sorry the video wasn't on. Thanks, John. One veil I can see it. Two veils, I can barely see the forms. Three veils, as good as a brick wall. Well, 70,000 veils. It's like the thing doesn't exist there, you see. That's a great teaching. And so between us and the goods, what we're looking for really, we're not looking for $1 trillion, although some people are. We're looking for this. What happens when the Hindu people, they go, the God in me greets the God in you. Okay, we're looking for this kind of unity, this hidden wholeness, and it is hidden behind veils. And the veils, where do the veils come from? Well, they come from uh, I did this quote with my seventh graders. I love to tell this story because it brings me back to being a teacher and junior. And I did the quote and I asked for comments. And one girl, seventh grade girl, said, when did Muhammad live? And I said, oh, in the seventh century. And she said, well, don't you think we have more than 70,000 veils between us and God now? And I laughed. I said, well, I don't know. I never thought about it. 70,000 sounded like a lot to me. And she says, I said, what do you think? And she said, well, I think I've got about 7 million. And so remember, three veils or four veils, it's a brick wall. You don't even know. It's like a Berlin Wall, and you don't even know that you're missing anything. And so there's the deal. How do we drop these veils? See? How do we drop these veils? That's what spiritual practice is all about in a nutshell. It's not about getting something new. We're already standing on top of a whale, and there's a great indwelling, as they say, that what we're looking for is at our very center. And we live, as long as you're looking out here, that's more veils. Somebody tell you you don't have it, you don't have what it takes, kid, early on, you know, uh, veils, veils. So where did these 70,000 veils come from? Well, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, born into a family that didn't want us, born in Haiti, uh, born in just a place where you barely can survive. uh, trauma, trauma, add 40 or 50,000 veils for sexual trauma or whatever. They accumulate. So spiritual practice has got to be not trying to fix anything. It has to be, first of all, seeing that that's what's happening. And also then to see the patterns of the veiling. And then realize there's whole clumps, and when you can't release them until you know they're there. So that's part of the job. That's really the job of spiritual practice. So when you sit in meditation, as we did this morning, and people say, "Well, what do you do? What do you get out of it?" Nothing. If you're trying to get something out of it, that's more veils because you already got everything that you need. Although, um, and I think anybody who works in this game, Buddha, Jesus, uh, they sort of know that uh, it's hard for people to believe that it's not out there, and especially when you live in a materialist culture like we do. Uh, we live in a materialist culture. We think everything is out there and online, and it will be delivered to our doorstep, and then we'll be happy. And that doesn't work. But we don't know why. All right, we'll see how happy Elon gets now that he's a trillionaire. Uh-huh. So, all right, we're going to explore this, but again, I'm going to explore it using poetry, very few words, because poetry is the language of heart and soul, which is the language of the right brain. Left brain, right brain, they're not two, they're connected by millions of axonal fibers, but we mostly live in the left brain. I was educated in the left brain. I didn't even have a body, or, in a way, for a long time till the Buddhists start working with me, get me to sit down. So we're going to use poetry, which is the language of the heart and soul, because that expands our vision. So here's the title poem of the day. It's called Everybody's Journey, and it'll start to give us an essence of what's going on. And I wrote this 18 years ago when my grandson Devin was born. The day he was born, I saw him, my son Aaron holding the little baby, and it moved me somehow because now there was another generation. It was something of eternity broke through, and so I wrote this on that day. And Aaron was holding Devin, uh, and Devin was wailing away. I have a picture of it to this day on my altar. He was just wailing away, and Aaron just looked freaked out. And then the nurse sort of wrapped the thing up a little tighter, and then he stopped crying. Anyway, here's the poem: Everybody's Journey. How you travel is where you arrive. The Mad Hatter. How you travel is where you arrive, and some of us have had some rough traveling, and we haven't arrived. That's where you arrive. All right, everybody's journey. All of us come wailing into this world, trailing clouds of glory. All of us come wailing into this world, trailing clouds of glory that are all too soon forgotten. And there we are once again, feeling like nobody. But with the help of our family, friends, mentors, therapists, and a lot of hard work, we can become somebody. All of us uh, come wailing into this world, trailing clouds of glory that are all too soon forgotten. And there we are, once again, feeling like we're nobody. But with the help of family, friends, mentors, therapists, a lot of hard work, we can become somebody. And then, only then, via some sort of contemplative practice, in a loving community, we can become everybody. So we start out as nobody. We forget anything from a previous life. The first, coming into the world wailing, coming in the world wailing, trailing clouds of glory. It's quoting Wordsworth. Wordsworth said that's because he believed in, had experienced that sense of the fact that we've had many lifetimes. All of us come wailing into the world, trailing clouds of glory. Who knows what our previous life was? Maybe we were a, famous teacher or Dalai Lama. Who knows? Uh, uh, but they're all too soon forgotten. Even the Dalai Lama only remembers a few little details, but they found him, and and then he remembered the teaching. So we forget most everything. And then we can't even turn over and, we're cold. And, the whole trauma of being birth is the original trauma because, uh, you know, it's whether we've been around for thousands of years or just this is the first time around, who knows? It's trauma because you can't even turn over. We can't do anything. So we feel like nobody. And but with the help of family, friends, mentors, therapists, and a lot of hard work, we can become somebody, you know, uh, whatever that somebody is. A teacher, became a teacher, still am a teacher. Some people become several things. Maybe you win awards, but we become somebody. But it takes a lot of work and help from other people. And some people, not everybody gets the same amount of help, and not everybody's family was any help at all. Okay. So at first we're nobody, then we can become somebody. But here's the that's not the end of the road. Because when we become somebody, and then, if you're somebody as an athlete, well, by the time you're 40, that's over. Then what? Or we're retired at 65 with a lot of money and we're not the CEO anymore. We're not that somebody. Then what? Well, the view is then some sort of contemplative practice. You guys are here for for this reason in a loving community. You're here with you got to have a contemplative practice to go the next stretch of the journey, which and we can become everybody. So get that sequence. Start at nobody, maybe we become somebody. These troubled people who are so damaged and got so little help that their only way of becoming somebody, maybe for a moment, is that you take a weapon and go shoot somebody and get on the news for 5 minutes or try to assassinate somebody. Great. It's sad, but these are people who haven't had any of that. Family, friends, mentors, therapists. They just they they've been deprived, but they're trying to be somebody. Well, most of us are somebody. We're parents, we got kids, we have jobs, but is that it? No. Only by so then with some sort of contemplative practice in a loving community. And a community was both key for both Jesus and Buddha, my two real the living Buddha and the living Christ. They both said, got to have a community, you can't make it on your own. And it should be a loving community. And that's that's the best. Then you can become everybody. Well, what does that mean to become everybody? What does that mean? Anyway, think of that progression now. There's more to come, but we can't become everybody. All of us, without exception, are at one point or another on this journey between nobody, somebody, everybody. And the sort of it can go backwards, when you lose your identification, some tragedy happens and you're no longer a husband. No, you're a widower. That's your somebody. And so life, it's not a real straight line, but we're all where somewhere on this thing from nobody to somebody to everybody without exception. Okay. It's not a straight line. You do regress, but that's where we're heading to become everybody. What could that mean? Just hold that mystery for a bit. And then finally, the poem says, so walk on, my brothers and sisters, walk on, and never forget to remember who we really are. So walk on, my brothers and sisters, walk on, and never forget to remember who we really are. And it goes back to the original thing is we forget. We forget even where we're going. Okay. To become everybody. What does that mean? So that's the first poem. Uh, and then a quote from Merton. Uh, I was 8 when Merton glimpsed his big view on the street corner just, north of here in Louisville. So some of us Kentuckians have seen the plaque where he saw everybody shining like the sun. And this was after 17 years of really banging away in the monastery. It just came. Uh, and I was 8 when that happened. And in March 18th, 1958, I was born in 49, and I never heard of Merton. And I went through 16 years of Catholic education and never heard about Thomas Merton or really any of the fabulous Christian mystics. They weren't being taught at that time. And I went through 4 years at Notre Dame. No, not a whisper about Merton. Merton was out of vogue. He was, for various reasons, he was the institution didn't like him towards the end of his life. Starting to learn from Buddhists and stuff like that. So I never heard of him. And it was only when I began Buddhist meditation in the 70s that I kept running into references to this guy, Thomas Merton, a Trappist monk. I didn't even know what a Catholic monk was. I mean, that was life growing up in the 50s and 60s. Uh, they didn't, I didn't even know monks existed. I thought only Buddhists were monks. I didn't know what Trappist monks were. So anyway, here's the quote and so Merton was a kind of find for me because he's one of the great mystics in the tradition. And I mean, it's the reason I'm sitting here is that I got the Merton bug and moved up. So this is what Merton says, the essence of what he said about that experience on the street corner where the last veil, as if you want to know what what's like for Merton when the last veil fell. And you got to remember, 4 veils is as good as 70,000. And so, it'll always sort of surprise you. And, but all of his showing up and chanting and whatever, they were all dropping or adding 2 veils if he was, getting drunk or whatever. But anyway, here's what he said when he actually was on the street corner. He was leaving the doctor's office, was ready to cross the corner of 4th and Walnut, which is now 4th and Muhammad Ali. And before he stepped off the curb, boom, the last veil fell, and he saw everybody in the shopping district, all these people, all shining like the sun. And he said, here's the quote, and if only everybody could realize this, what it looks like when the last veil falls. And if only everybody could realize this, but it cannot be explained. There's no way of telling people that they're all walking around shining like the sun. Boy, is he right on that. Because I've been trying to do it in grade school and junior high. Once I got a taste for it and understood what Bert was talking about. Right now, people do. He says you can't be explained. That's why I'm using poems. You don't explain a poem. A poem gives you an experience. And there's no way of telling people that they're all walking around shining like the sun. Yeah. And I think Jesus, one of the sort of grossest metaphors in the gospel is Jesus talked about, uh, um, trying to tell people this was, in a lot of cases, like throwing pearls to swine, which is a strong metaphor in the Jewish tradition. Doesn't mean that people are pigs. It just means people are often not ready for this. And you can't explain it. Words won't do it, but you can put them in situations where they might just get a taste of it. And as you do spiritual practice, I've been working with this for more than 50 years, the taste of it stronger and stronger it comes through, you see. You can't explain it. So I'm not going to explain it, but we're going to I'm just going to keep trying to give you the view. This is a poem I wrote at some point called In Light of Merton, in light of not only getting Merton, but also getting a taste of it. I mean, I moved up here after I would spend some time at the monastery where I really got a taste of it. My mentor never explained anything. He just walked with me and, uh, batted my questions, knocked them out of the park. And then I was there with trying to figure out what he was talking about. This is called In Light of Merton. This will give you another view now. and this is in light of reading Merton, especially about his experience, the true nature of our being is an infinite spaciousness which is untouched by veils and illusion. It's like a pure diamond blazing with the invisible light of heaven, and it's in everybody. So if we could only unveil it and live in light of it, we would radiate a love that would make all the darkness and all the cruelty vanish forever. We practice to unveil it and to learn how to live in light of it. Listen to again the true nature of our being. Early on, uh, you know, uh, if you were here for the morning meditation, we used a couple of, well, the main Tibetan mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. And we used that to help us go into meditation, which the Tibetans use. The Trappists would chant the Psalms. Chanting tends to get you out of the left brain. The left brain is the veil maker. And there's a reason for that. I mean, it's a beautiful. You don't want to be a half brain. You wouldn't want to be a half wit, and you wouldn't want to get rid of your left brain. The ego lives there. You don't have to get rid of the ego on this journey. The ego's got to sort of take a step back, though. It's got to get a bit weaker and realize its place, and the heart and the soul take over at some point, and they give you the taste of this thing, you see. But the true nature of our being, the you whether you call it your true self as Merton used it, or the true nature of who we are really at the core. And Merton saw it as that's why he had no problem talking to the Dalai Lama eventually, because the Tibetans see our true nature as infinitely spacious and a lot of room. The left brain makes everything sort of small and contracted so we can control it. Yeah, that's fine. You can follow procedure and you can keep the roof over your head and do all the things to survive. Okay. But the right brain expands reality, you see, into infinity and eternity. Time and space only, time and measurement of space only live in the left brain for when we need it. But when we don't need it, if you're trying to see what's beyond the veil, if you're trying to see your own hidden wholeness, your own um, inherent uh, blazing diamond nature, left brain is no help. That's why in meditation we use sometimes mantras or whatever to uh, get through the static of the left brain. You see, so the true nature of our being is an infinite spaciousness which is untouched by sin and illusion. And sin is not like something wrong. It's really more like that sense of a veil. Every veil, it helps us. We miss the mark. We can't see past it. And doing awful things, killing people, ripping them off. These are all. You get a lot of veils when you do this. It just comes from it because we're blundering our way, we're hurting people and the veils accrue. Uh, but the ultimate meaning is of a veil. It's something that blocks your view. You lose your way, you see. It's untouched by those things because it's behind them. It's the same way when Allah says, between you and me, there are none, you see. So, and it's like a pure diamond blazing with the infinite light of heaven. What an image that could be at your very center. That's what it's like. See, and again, poets. Jesus was a poet. Buddha was a scientist, and so Jesus knows you can't explain. You can't, in words, actually say what the true nature is like, but you could say what it's like. He said, and this is the kingdom of heaven. He's talking about it, then it's in you. What? But then he says things like, oh, it's like a mustard seed, so small you might not even notice it. But when you start noticing it, every time you notice it, every time you get a glimpse of it, it grows. You nourish it. Interesting. Jesus was a poet, you see, so he used what things were like because you couldn't really say what they were. Can't be explained. Now, and it's in everybody. That's the key. And you got, and no exceptions. So you pick your worst person in the world that you know, you just wish the worst things happened to them, malice and all that, these people they deserve to go to jail forever, capital punishment, scoundrels, killers, chainsaw murderers, corrupt politicians. Uh, yeah, they have it too. It's in everybody, which gives you the possibility of connecting with that. And the Tibetans are the kindest teachers I know, and so when the Dalai Lama heard that the Mao Zedong had died, he wept because he realized that he had done so many horrible things in his life that there were a lot more veils accumulated, and he was going to take him many more lifetimes to ever get in touch with who he is. And he wept for him in compassion. See, it's in everybody. And then you can't hate anybody. You can have compassion for these people. You can have compassion for people who hate you. You know, Jesus had that supposedly, because one of the things that went on through the tradition, he's on the cross and these guys crucified him, and he said, "Forgive them, Father. They don't know what they're doing." That's a good example. Uh, yeah, so it's in everybody, which is the kicker, because people can change if they something happens that they get in touch with this. You know, so if we could only unveil it ourselves and live in light of it, this blazing diamond, we would radiate a love that would, the Tibetans say it doesn't matter how long a cave could be dark for 1 million years, but when you light a match, it doesn't take 1 million years for the darkness to go away. See, this idea of time and measurement, it doesn't have anything to do with this dropping of the veils and seeing the light that's in you. And so, yeah, somebody one time I was doing a retreat and I was talking about this for years now. And the woman, after the end of the retreat, she had a great retreat, but she was out weeping on the front porch of this retreat house. I said, "What's wrong?" And she says, "Oh," he said, to see this, and I'm 60 years old, it's too late, it's too late. I was like 35 at the time. I was just starting to work. But I said, "Oh no," I said, don't worry about that." I said that you're not a prisoner of time here or age or anything. I said, the fact that you're starting to see something, it's progressive. It's a quantum thing. And yeah, once there's a light in the darkness, you know, it's a prelude to the Gospel of St. John. There is St. John, there's a light in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. So don't worry about how old you are when you start to get a little taste of it. Don't worry about that. Uh, uh, Merton on his last day when he didn't know it was his last day, but when he gave a talk, he boiled down this whole talk at the end. He says, the whole purpose of life is to live by love. One of his last ways of really condensing it. It's almost as if he said he was leaving the world and he knew it, and which he didn't, but it's sort of there it was. The whole purpose of life is to live by love. Let that sink in. What would that mean? Yeah, that could make all the darkness and the cruelty vanish forever. And last Sunday when Sharon gave the talk and she was talking about Teilhard de Chardin, here is a guy who, man, he saw all this in the 40s and the 50s, and it was too big a vision for the church, Catholic Church, and they sort of didn't let him write about it and whatever. They didn't know what to make of it because they weren't as far along as he was. It was again pearls before swine, and but he saw it all going. He says it's all going into love. into love. Yeah. And he said, and so the poem ends with, we practice to unveil it. That's why we practice, not to get something extra, but to, in a way, spiritual practice in all traditions is subtractive. We're dropping the veils. Practice to unveil it and to learn then how to live in light of it. Because we get, it doesn't, the unveiling doesn't happen so grandly as like with Merton. If you really keep your practice up, you get little glimpses, glimpse by glimpse. You learn how to live in light of these glimpses, you say. So that's called In Light of Merton. And yeah, just one short thing because we're about out of our time, but I think this is also something of Merton's that I think is too good not to bring in here. He says there. This is in a prose poem called Hagia Sophia. He said, "There is in all things a hidden wholeness. There is in all things a hidden wholeness." And he didn't just mean all people at this point when he wrote this, because he was starting to go around with his camera and folk and shoot tree stumps. And when you look at Merton's contemplative photography, he was looking through a lens to try to see this same principle. You know, our brother John here in the community, he knows what that's like. He goes around with his camera when he's on his walk and he sees things through the lens and is kind enough to send them to the community and show us them. So Merton was doing this, and he says, "There is in all things a hidden wholeness. There is in all things an inexhaustible sweetness and purity, a silence that is a foundation of action and joy. There is in all things an inexhaustible sweetness and purity, a silence that is a foundation of action and joy and peace." You see, we can't find these things outside. It rises up in gentleness and flows out to me from the unseen roots of all created being. Isn't that beautiful? Merton really, when he hit it, he hit it. He says this, there is in all things a hidden wholeness. It rises up in gentleness. You can't force this whole operation. I had to learn that. It took me a long time. You can't force this kind of work. Rises up in gentleness and flows out of me. Remember, it's in you to begin with. It flows out of me from the unseen roots of all created being. You know, just stops you in your tracks. And Merton wrote a lot, and a lot of it was blah 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 because he was just, words will tangle you up. And I've seen Merton's daily writings. He would sit and then he would write. He'd go into silence and he'd chant. Like the last couple of years when he was up in the Hermitage, uh, he wasn't. He would do the hours though on his own. He'd be out on the front porch and he'd be reading the 3:15 vigils chants. So he'd be chanting it while the monks were chanting it down at the monastery. He's chanting it out to the whippoorwills and whatever. And so he'd do the chants. That's the words. And then he'd go into silent meditation and sit for who long. He wasn't on a timer. He'd sit in silence. And then when you do that, and we're going to do that when we come back at the end of the talk, we're going to come and sit with all this. But when you sit in this kind of silence and you're not trying to do anything, the only thing to do when you're in this kind of silence is if you catch yourself thinking, which is, you know, there's always chatter, but when you grab onto nice bit of chatter and you start thinking about it, when you catch yourself thinking, you just let it go. That's like letting the veils fall, because whatever you're caught up in is getting in the way. So remember, that's the only thing you do when we come back to sit in meditation. It took me decades to figure that out. There's nothing to do. When you catch yourself doing, which was thinking, you let the thought go. Now, if you do that repeatedly, for a while, years, things will either come up from below from the unconscious, and uh, I'm gonna the talks in the future, the heart-to-heart talks I'm giving in the future are going to bring in psychology, uh, because psychology, Carl Jung especially, and Freud, but definitely Jung said, there's a whole well of nasty veils down there that another way of letting them go is let them come up. Okay, so there's all the wounds of the life. They come up. Our wounds are thousands of veils, and when they come up, then they can be healed in the light. You see. So when you do the sitting, sometimes things come up. Maybe they're not too nice, but it's the process. Or things come down. Uploadings or downloadings. One way or another, stuff comes to you through the veiling, and then Mert would write about it. He'd write about his problems. He'd write about everything that came to him. So things will come to you in the sitting, you see. Uh, if you just don't do anything, you know, you just let them come, and then we'll have 10 minutes after our next sitting, and I'll get you ready for it when we come back. Uh, but it becomes a very fruitful. Merton wrote 60 books in 20 years in the monastery, and he didn't really have time, but he had this practice that we're using. Okay, here's the last poem. I have it up. The first thing that people might see as they walk in the loosely follow is it's a plaque on the wall, a little frame thing, and it's called My Calling, which is really what vocation means. Doesn't mean your job. Uh, it means what you're called to do. And the call comes from the heart. And a lot of times people's employment, how they keep the roof over their head, uh, it's important, but it's not their calling, you know. Uh, and maybe sometimes they only find that out later. Like, what is your heart calling you to do? No, that's called your vocation. When I was in grade school, Catholic grade school, vocation week, the priest would come in and they'd say, how many of you want to be a priest or nun? And this is in the 50s. About half of us raised our hands. I wanted to be a priest at that time. I thought, well, yeah, that's my calling. Uh, so, uh, so this is when people ask me what do you do? Are you retired? I said, no, I'm not retired. And they go, well, what do you do? Well, I don't recite this poem, but it is what I do. Uh, my vocation and my avocation, my work and my play is helping people create a way to unveil their hidden wholeness. My vocation and my avocation, my work and my play. This is work, but this is play for me. This is enjoyment. It's helping people create a way. The key word there is you got to be creative because you're working with all creation here. It's not like Mert found his own way. This is a wayless way. It's got to be John's way or Cheryl's way or Ron's way or Lorraine's way. You've got to find your own way within these parameters. You've got to be willing to trust yourself, you see, helping people to create a way to unveil their hidden wholeness. That plaque's been up for 20 years. This is not a new idea for me, but it bears repeating because it's the only game in town. This is everybody's journey. All right, well, that's enough. That's enough of the words. We're going to take a break for 15 minutes, and then at 15 past the hour, um, we'll sit with all this and really try to digest it. Try to digest it. Uh, all right. So I'll see you then. I'll see you then. Thanks for listening.